Good morning, everyone. It is Dan in the Chicken Garage. It is Thursday, minus 34 with the wind chill here. So I got a fire on the shop. I got my coffee as usual, and today I wanted to talk about suspension. Suspension on a dirty bike, and the importance. So first off, full disclosure, I'm not a suspension tuner. I'm not a pro. I'm a backyard hack. I have suspension set up from a professional tuner on my specific 21 TE300, and I want to talk about the performance that this has given me on this particular bike. So again, this is my own opinion. People may disagree with this, and this is fine. And if you want to leave comments, absolutely, please feel free. And anyone who's got anything extra to add to this, absolutely go ahead. I am doing this because I think it's the most important thing that you can talk about on a dirt bike, regardless of your skill level. I've been riding dirt bikes for, I don't know, 25 years, and I've had many dirt bikes over the years, 4-strokes and 2-strokes. I'm 240-ish pounds, 6'3". I'm a big guy. So with my full gear, my tools, my hydration pack, helmet, boots, the whole 9 yards, I'm probably tipping 260, 265 on any dirt bike. Now, every brand new dirt bike you're going to buy off the showroom floor is going to come stock with spring rates, front and rear, for a 180-pound rider, maybe 190-ish, and that might be fine for most people, but certainly not for me. So to get the full benefits, I've always had to respring my bikes, just so I don't blow through the stroke, especially on the front and the rear. This particular bike, the 21s, the Huskies, the KTMs, the 250s, the 150s, the 300s, dating back, I believe, I'll be wrong on this, probably 4 years. When these bikes first came out, they were highly touted with their suspension talk with the Explorer forks. Now the Explorer's maybe 3 years old. The Explorer forks on the TE model are springs, and on the TX model it's an air fork. So we're just going to talk about the springs on the TE models and the KTM versions as well. Now, these springs come stock. You've got your compression and your rebound settings on each of the forks. These forks, from what I've heard from quite a few different riders personally and reading different forums and such, they were known to blow through the mid-range of the stroke, which causes a lot of problems, especially at speed. Now, I've heard a lot of guys say at slow technical riding, they're super happy with the stock setup that these bikes come with. I've also known guys who've gone up rates on their springs, front and rear. And although that might give you a little higher stance on the bike, it's not going to improve the stock suspension components that these Explorers come with. I think KTM Husky really dropped the ball with these forks. They made them to be out something that they're not. They really aren't, and that's primarily what I want to talk about. So again, low speed, I've heard a lot of great things, but like myself, I'm sure there's many of you who like low speed and high speed. I certainly do. I like it all. When I'm going down and I come out of a single track and I see a nice long whooped out section 2 track that you and your buddies can hammer down and wah wah wah, just friggin' go, that's where these guys fall short. So Again, slow stuff, heard good things, but I like, you know, the full range of using a dirt bike, and I believe, you know, that's what most people like. So there's a few different options, and some of them are cheap and some of them are not so cheap. I did a lot of research. Now, full disclosure, before I even swung a leg on this bike and rode it, I had the suspension redone before I even brought the bike home, because of what I read and because of what I heard from individual riders personally. So I went online and I started talking and reading and researching multiple. I talked to 8 different tuners. I'm in Canada. I talked to 3 different tuners across the country here, and I talked to at least 4, maybe 5 in the US with their own versions of fixes for the suspension. And I've talked to suspension companies who offered a full-on rebuild, front and rear. Kreft, for example, was one. WP I talked to out of Calgary in Canada. I talked to a suspension tuner in Ontario, can't remember the name. I talked to one in this part of the world where I live, and several in the US. What I finally opted for was to go for an Ohlins front and rear cartridge kit. It's a Canadian tuner out of Montreal. You can't see the sticker here, but it's called EVO Racing in Montreal. Super guy. One of the things about Loic is his name that I talked to was his customer service before I spent 1 penny. He was always available for phone calls and texts. If he didn't answer right off, he would get back to me usually within an hour to 4 or 5 hours. And I had a lot of questions for him. I am very particular when it comes to my stuff, and not knowing a whole lot about suspension, I was concerned, worried, apprehensive about spending the amount of money that I did for this particular setup. So I wanted to know all the facts as much as I possibly could, and Loic, and a lot of other tuners as well, don't get me wrong. They were very, very good to get back to me and talk to me, but I got lost in a lot of the jargon. I am not a suspension tuner, but this particular guy really, what should I say, dumbed down the whole suspension talk for me, and ultimately he is who I decided to go with, and he certainly convinced me that this was personally my best option. So I had the suspension, the forks sent to him, or sent the forks to him, and the rear shock, and he tore it down. He put a Ohlins cartridge kit in the front, and what that did was, first of all, I have a closed chamber system now, and I have compression settings on the bottom of both fork legs and rebound at the top. And he also took my rear shock and he completely revalved it along with the front with his cartridge kit from Ohlins. Different springs too, of course, different components in the rear as far as the bladder goes, and different bushings, and I forget what do you call that, a better seal system, which isn't as doesn't have as much stiction. By the time I sent it to him and got it back, it was about probably, I don't know, 2.5, 3 weeks, and put on the bike and started driving. Now, I've never driven an Ohlins system before, but I have driven bikes with different setups in them, and they seemed good, but again, just springs front and rear, unfortunately, you guys, is probably one of the cheapest ways to go for changing your suspension. But on these particular models with the Explore forks, in my opinion, you're just wasting your money just doing that. So for me, over the years, what I've learned with dirt bikes, different than wheelers and different with vehicles, dirt bikes, there's there's three major important things that personally I want to have done before I drive a bike. The older I get, the more important these things are. Firstly, to people who have either been driving for years and years, longer than I have, and especially for people who are just getting back onto bikes or just learning to drive a dirt bike, the most important mod that you can do, in my opinion, is fuel. And by fuel, I mean putting gas in the tank and driving the friggin' bike. Seat time hours, learning the bike, learning the clutch, learning how it handles, just seat time. That's the most important mod that you can do. So many guys, when they get a brand new bike, and I'm not saying this is wrong, but many people put money into everything else for mods, ECU mods, and different domes on the heads, and protection mods, and which are all, don't get me wrong, those are all important, especially the protection mods as far as I'm concerned. Also, as far as I'm concerned, this bike fully stock, the way that it is, the motor on it, for me anyway, has been absolutely fine. It's way more bike than I can handle, and I'm very impressed with the torque and the low end and the top end. I haven't even adjusted the power valve on it yet, which I'm going to this summer, but you know, I do all of the other mods that are important, like handguards and rad guards and disc protectors and case savers. I have other components on this too, which the cheapest one is a $25 air filter sock, which I've talked in other videos, which is unbelievable for protecting the motor from dust and sand and crap from getting by the air filter. So yeah, TPS mod or protection plates, just lots of things. I've taken and put an extra hose on the crossover tube for the coolant. Those are all great, and they can really help to save you money in the long run. One time I crashed I had a cheap pair of handguards on a KTM 500, and I crashed in a really bad rock section, me and a buddy racing. I went down, I sprained my shoulder, and I tore my clutch perch and my clutch lever in half, and we had to zip tie it. We had to bend Allen keys over rocks and smash them and zip tie and duct tape to put the clutch back together. At the end of the day, it cost me about 600 Canadian to replace all of that. But could have that been prevented if I had better suspension? Yeah, I do think so. Because at the time, all I was riding on that bike were just stiffer springs. Valving was stock, everything else was stock, I just had stiffer springs. However, I guess I'm getting away from the point. The point is there's lots of money that you can spend on these bikes for protection, and I do believe that's important, but the first thing is seat time. The second thing is gas and clutch control. And along with common sense, those are very important things to know and understand and appreciate. But ride your bike, learn it, and then go from there. I have been driving long enough in my life to know what's important and what I can get away with and what I really do want. And on this particular bike, before anything else was done, I paid the money to put proper suspension on this. And at the end of the day, it's the best money I've spent now. This cost, it wasn't cheap to do this, but I mean, this bike cost me, 11.5, 12 grand, plus the extra parts I put on it, plus tax. So I plan on keeping this bike for a long time, and I knew that in order for me to get the full enjoyment and the benefit with my riding skill, which is good, but it's certainly not great, I knew that I wanted to get the best traction and to get the full benefit of what this bike can do with the frame, the suspension, the motor, everything. And with my riding skill, I wanted to get the most out of this bike, the most enjoyment, and I needed to start with the suspension on this. So that's what I did. But I wanted to go and do a full suspension tune on it not just replace the springs. And that's primarily what this little video is about. So power to the ground is very important, not just on a flat, whooped out section, but especially power to the ground going on steep, gnarly uphill climbs where you're hopping over logs and rocks. You want that rear suspension to, when it hits that rock or that log, when it comes back down to the ground, to not pogo and jump and bounce, but to stick and still provide traction, because it's not bouncing off something when it comes back and puts that power to the ground. And I only had to do minor adjustments to this after I drove it for 4 or 5 times, a few clicks here on the front. The rear I haven't touched, and I finally got it dialed into where that, for me, it seems to work great. So that is what I've done to get the power back to the ground and get the full benefit out of this beast and enjoyment out of it. And it's really inspired my confidence. I don't freak out when I see something on the trail and have to worry about maybe going at a different angle, excuse me, or slowing down or thinking an alternate route. This inspires me now, where I either just have to, drop the clutch, bounce it, give it a little bit of gas, or just hit something head on with it. The only thing that I've always tried to do and still do is, trying to hit stuff at a perpendicular angle, like a crossed up log. If I can adjust my riding line to hit that at a perpendicular angle as opposed to an angle, then obviously that's a better option if you have time to do that and have the room. If not, pop the clutch and let the bike do its thing, and this suspension allows me to do that, especially in my head when I'm coming up to those obstacles. As far as high speed, there was a section last summer where another guy, a buddy of mine, and I were driving. He's got a TX300, and this guy's a good rider. He has suspension work done on his. He did a video on it. He put in the Lucky's kit on the front on his air suspension. Now I don't believe he touched the rear, but he did do the front. Anyway, we come out of a section and we hit a long. We were side by side, and we hit a long, whooped out, probably a kilometer long section that we both know. And we looked at each other and we dropped down a couple pegs, and away we went. And we were side by side, and there's a ton of whooped out whoops on this trail because of all the wheelers that go on it over the years, and snowmobiles. And man, I'll tell you, I kicked this down to like 3rd gear and fanned the clutch, and we took off. And I was really interested to see how both bikes performed with his suspension setup and mine. Now, I didn't drive his. All I know is what this suspension did for me, and I could not have done what I did if I had the stock suspension on this. There's just no way. This just hovered over those knolls and wallows and washouts, and I didn't even think about letting off or worried about what the bike was going to do. And now we got to the end of the trail, and I was just screaming with pure delight, and then all of a sudden the trail ended and there was the woods, and I forgot about the section that was right there. So I'm like, holy man, I come on the front brake in the rear and let the bike do its thing, and at one point I'm pretty sure I saw the rear end slide around in my peripheral, and no problems. I let off the gas a bit, and it straightened back out again, and the bike did its thing, and I wasn't even concerned. And when we stopped at the end of that trail, he's like, holy man, I thought for sure you were going to crash in your head. I've never seen that before, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, no, I wasn't worried about it at all. Now, that's happened to me in other times, and I've crashed. Different bikes, yeah. Maybe I was going faster at a younger age, don't know. I felt like I was going fast this time last year, but maybe I was only doing 20K. But it felt like I was doing 120. But the suspension allowed me to get over that block in my head, because I knew that It would handle what this was set up to handle with my weight and riding skill and ability, and the terrain that I usually ride on. Good suspension tuner will set up your bike for those aspects. So I came out of that unscathed and no problem, and continued on. And that's power to the ground, and that's confidence inspiring, and that was money well spent. So I guess when you're spending a lot of money on anything, whether it's dirt bike components or on your vehicle or in your house or on your wheeler or whatever, if you can get the full benefits of the money that you spend, then it's worthwhile, right? And that's the way this has worked out for me. So I was able to keep it under control, and at the end of the day, I didn't crash. I'm 50, I'd like to be 40. I'll be 53 in a couple months. I don't drive near as fast as I used to, I don't think. I have a little more common sense than I used to, but I also have a bike that's really the most updated, top-performing 300 two-stroke I think that you can get. And these things go, as you know. I've had 500 four-strokes, I've driven 450 Suzuki's, Yamahas, all kinds of power and grunt. And I love the 300 two-stroke for everything that it does. But the confidence that it gives me, and the power and the stability that it gives me with this setup is truly amazing. So again, maybe I'm a little bit slower than I used to be. Maybe I have a little more common sense than I used to have. But I also have one of the best bikes ever made, as far as, you know, my opinion. And it's really worth the money if that's important to you. In this case, this was for me. So I hope that, you know, might help people who are wondering about spending money on suspension as opposed to just getting resprung. The reason I'm doing this video, I should have mentioned this at the start, is because I was scrolling through some forums this morning, and I came across one on Facebook on a guy that's got suspension questions for his TE. Same year as this one, at 21. And a guy came on and talked about the stock suspension on this bike, and I read it and I commented below his, and I'm like, you know what, that was extremely well said. You're 100% right on the money. And I thought, you know, I'm going to do a video and put it on the Gnarly Chicken. And if this helps people out, then that's great. And if you think it's I'm full of shit and I make no sense at all, that's great too. Again, I'm not a tuner. I'm a weekend warrior kind of rider, but I do know that I took a chance. If you're thinking about taking a chance and spending some money on your suspension, and there are many reputable companies, the one I chose was the one I chose for my own reasons, but there are many out there who will make these bikes perform like they should as far as suspension goes. And again, one of the most important things you can do, in my opinion, is proper suspension work. Sure, I just burped. Excuse me. So, if that helps, that's awesome. Let me know what you think, and if you have any questions about the particular setup that I've got, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions that you have, or any other suspension setups that you want, or obviously anything about this bike, and what I've done to it, and what I'm going to continue doing to it. So thanks for watching, and thanks to all the subscribers so far. Again, my buddy and I, Steve, Gnarly Chicken. By the way, I'm gnarly and he's chicken. We love doing these videos. They're fun, they're enjoyable, and we just do it because we just, well, I love to talk. So he's the mechanic, but we love riding, and we love wrenching on stuff, and we love figuring out problems and learning new things. And I hope it's been helpful for a lot of people. So the people who have subscribed and watched so far and have commented this last year or so, thanks very much. It's really it's a real pleasure to read the comments and to answer back to people all over the world. So it's been a lot of fun. So we're going to continue it, and I hope you guys do as well.